This week, with all of the division that exists in the world today, speaking primarily of what's happening in the United States, how can we focus and find common ground? In a premiere reading of a Whence Academy research paper, centered on the 29th degree, we talk about tolerance and what it really means. Then, the often asked question, in our minds anyway, what do I do with this Masonic stuff? After someone tries to donate it or you find it online and somebody's trying to sell it, what do we do with all of that? Patrick Day has got some great thoughts on it. All this and more. Stay tuned.
Welcome back to Whence Came You, a Masonic podcast featuring research papers and discussions related to Freemasonry. Here's your host, Brother Robert Johnson.
Welcome back to the Whence Came You podcast. This is episode number 690. Right away, I want to thank our contributors, fellows, producers, and legacy partners of the WCY podcast. It is because of you that we can continue to bring trusted Masonic education to anyone interested in the royal art. If you are curious on how you can help support the WCY podcast and quality Masonic education, then head on over to our website, wcypodcast.com. Click on Support the Show and check out the various options. I want to give a shout out to Lawn Lodge 815 in Oak Lawn, Illinois. Had a wonderful time going out there. They invited me out to do a presentation which was open to the public. I did my presentation on apotheosis and quantum entanglement. They were very accommodating. We did about an hour and 20 minutes on the lecture. So I went over about 20 minutes, but we had great conversation, and the brothers did not disappoint in the concepts and the things that they were bringing up during and after the lecture. So I want to thank them so much for getting my wheels turning, and I hope it was. So again, if you're out in the Oak Lawn, Illinois area anytime, check out Lawn Lodge 815 and see what they've got going on. The brothers there will not disappoint. They are a great group of dudes. Anyway, on to the education. I've got a couple of pieces, as mentioned. The first that I wanted to read actually came out of the Northern Light Summer 2025 issue of the Scottish Rite Northern Masonic Jurisdiction, who puts out their magazine. In their magazine, they usually will feature an article written by somebody who has taken the Whence Academy or Whence Academy, and you can read those articles that they do, and these are sort of part of the curriculum, and when they graduate the academy, they can be selected to have their article put on the website as well as in the magazine in print. So this was a great article that I really liked. I found that it was absolutely relevant today, and I reached out to the editor, illustrious PJ Roop, and I said, hey, is it possible to read this particular article? Give credit, all of those things. He reached out to the author, and he also said it was fine. So this is called In Search of Common Ground, based on the Knight of St. Andrew and the 29th degree. This is by Jonathan Emace. He's a 32nd degree Scottish Rite Mason out of the Valley of Rochester. So, let's get started. In Search of Common Ground, he starts. I selected the 29th degree, Knights of St. Andrew, because its core value of tolerance resonates with my experiences both within and beyond the lodge. In a world filled with conflict and division, this degree offers a model for how people of different backgrounds, faiths, and perspectives can still find common ground in their shared humanity. The lesson is conveyed not through speeches or lectures, but through human interaction, reflection, and dignified conduct, which makes its message all the more powerful and personal. The core value of tolerance is communicated in the degree through a dramatic and emotional allegory. A group of Christian knights, captured after a failed crusade, is brought before Sultan Bayezid. Though they are prisoners and former enemies, the Sultan treats them with unexpected dignity. He removes their chains and acknowledges their courage and honor. This is not a display of sympathy or weakness, but a strength and principled restraint. It demonstrates tolerance in action, choosing respect over retaliation. The most striking moment of the degree occurs when the knights are offered freedom on the condition that they return with their ransom in 2 years or forfeit their lives. Rather than keeping them in prison, the Sultan accepts their promise to return. This act of trust is not a matter of shared creed, but shared character. Yet, even in this moment, the focus is not on moral alignment or agreement. The emphasis is on mutual respect, showing that tolerance can exist even in the presence of great differences. Later, the Sultan expresses a desire to join the knights in their order. Initially denied, he does not react with rage. Instead, he speaks to explain his own beliefs. He speaks about the teachings of the Quran, describing virtues like compassion, kindness, and duty. The knights realize that these values mirror many of their own. Through dialogue and humility, they begin to understand that while their faiths differ, their aspirations for goodness do not. This mutual understanding reinforces the heart of the degree, tolerance. Tolerance is not about conversion or compromise. It is about reverence for the dignity of others. As a Mason, and as junior warden of my lodge, this degree has given me new insight into how I interact with others. Within the lodge, we come together from many walks of life. Political, religious, and cultural differences are inevitable. The lesson of this degree reminds me that Masonic unity is not created by ignoring these differences, but by creating space for each brother to be heard and respected. I strive to lead by example, promoting respectful dialogue and building harmony through compassion. Outside of the lodge, as a husband and a father, this degree takes on even more profound meaning. We live in a time when division and outrage are often celebrated. I want to raise my children to think critically, to listen carefully, and to treat others with kindness, even when they disagree. The 29th degree provides a story I can draw to explain how strength is not always shown by force, but often by patience, restraint, and open-mindedness. Tolerance begins at home, and I hope to model it every day through my words and actions. This degree also encouraged me to reflect on moments in my life when I have failed to extend the same grace that the Sultan showed. There were times when I dismissed others because they thought differently or challenged my assumptions. The degree helped me realize that growth requires humility and that tolerance is something we must practice daily. It is not just a passive acceptance, but an active choice to respond with empathy when judgment is easier. In conclusion, the 29th degree, Knight of St. Andrew, is a profound demonstration of what it means to live by the value of tolerance. It teaches that peace is not forged through conquest, but through courage, humility, and open-hearted dialogue. The degree's timeless message is a call to action. It urges us to build bridges instead of walls, to listen before speaking, and to see the light in others even when they walk different paths. This lesson has changed how I approach my Masonic duties, how I raise my children, and how I strive to grow as a man. For these reasons, the degree has left a lasting impression, and its teachings continue to guide my journey. What a great article, and how timeless it is. You know, even somebody like myself, who I have said that there's a quote that I really love, and the quote is, "To tolerate is to offend," because at a base level of understanding, the toleration that this is referring to is the type of toleration that's like, oh, so-and-so's a member of my lodge, he's of this religion, I don't like that, but also I'll deal with it. To me, that is not the type of tolerance that Masonry teaches. It is a different kind of tolerance. It's a tolerance that is derived from mutual friendship, love, and respect that we have for our brothers. And that this should then permeate into the world through our interactions with our families, our friends, our communities, and even at work. Anyway, My thanks goes out one more time to the Northern Light and the Scottish Rite Northern Masonic Jurisdiction, and of course to Brother Jonathan Amaze, as well as Brother PJ Roop, who assisted in getting a hold of Brother Jonathan so that we could read this wonderful article on the show. Brother Jonathan, great job, awesome paper, and I hope all of you will give this some thought as you move through your life. I mean, this is a lesson that has very intense practical applications right now. And if you say, how or where can I apply this right now? Turn on the news. That's all you have to do.
The next piece I have for you comes from the Meet, Act, and Part blog. Now, I had intended to read this piece a number of weeks ago when it first dropped, back in August. But with everything going on, I did get delayed. So here in this episode, we're going to get quote unquote caught up. Now, a little bit of context. The article is called The Question Concerning What to Do with Masonic Artifacts. This was put together by Patrick Day. Now, before I read this, you may find it interesting to note that this is a hot topic. You might not think it is, but we knew it was a hot topic a number of years ago, probably back in 2018, 2019, somewhere around there before the pandemic, in the before time. Scott Duball, at that time, who was the chairman of the Illinois Masonic Committee on Masonic Education, wrote a piece, and the piece was called Nobody Wants Your Grandfather's Old Masonic Junk, or something along those lines. I can't exactly remember, and I can't even look it up, because we published the post and it wasn't up but for 8 hours before the owner of the blog, illustrious Brother Todd E. Creason, had phoned us up and said, I'm getting phone calls and people are really mad about this piece. What did it say? Well, it basically said that items of sort of trinket quality, lapel pins and all of those types of things, nobody wants them. And Scott said, when I'm gone, just throw them away. They don't need to be passed down or honored or anything. They're just junk. And where Scott was coming from was this idea of placing Masonic materialism over the real work. And so in that aspect, I loved the article, in fact. But a number of people, historians and collectors alike, bombarded, Todd, and we pulled the piece down. How crazy is that? I mean, we've taken on some pretty hot topics in the past on the Midnight Freemasons, and that's the one that got pulled down. Just insane. Anyway, no promises with what we're going to reveal right here, coming from Patrick Day. Let's check it out. Without further delay, the question concerning what to do with Masonic artifacts, published August 6th, 2025 by worshipful brother Patrick Day. I recall some years ago, someone salvaged a Masonic cornerstone from a building that was being demolished. They tried to sell it on Facebook, and a bunch of Masons had to chime in with the usual, quote, donate it to a lodge, because that's useful to both this guy and some lodge. I mean, he did the work, and he's expected to give it away? Further, what is a lodge going to do with it? I mean that. What is a lodge going to do with an old cornerstone? Put it on display? Go into your lodge and look around and tell me where you might put some old cornerstone to display. I remember when Boulder Lodge here in Colorado had moved to another building. They took along the old cornerstone that was salvaged from the original building that burned down a century ago. And that cornerstone just sat on the floor in the fellowship hall for years. I know they planned to mount it on the wall, but I don't know if they have done it yet. Here's another example. While doing research on my second volume of the writings of PGM, Lawrence, and Greenleaf, I found that the old cornerstone he laid for the Arapahoe County Courthouse was salvaged and then cut up. 2 of the pieces were worked into rough and perfect ashlars for the Lawrence and Greenleaf Lodge in Denver. When I found this out, I called up the secretary, and he said they may have it in their storage closet. I found that they still had the perfect ashlar, but they left the rough ashlar at their old building. They were able to get their rough ashlar back, but as far as I'm aware, both stones are still in their storage closet. Thus, I present the question: what do we do with Masonic artifacts? And I don't just mean cornerstones. I mean anything Masonic: old patents, jewels, plastic lapel pins, cloth aprons, all those worn out and water-damaged copies of Eastern Star ritual books you find laying around and so forth. I believe I have officially lost count of the number of times someone has stopped by my lodge and said something to the effect of, "My granddaddy was a Mason. Do you guys want his old apron and some of his old Masonic books?" We used to say yes, but after a while, we realized that most of the time we are just getting things from someone of no real importance, nor one with a connection to our lodge, and the books are usually just a copy of Morals and Dogma that is falling apart and a battered copy of Duncan's Ritual, so we stopped accepting such donations. Some items are going to be sought after and accepted. Recently, a Masonic widow donated the Grand Lodge of Colorado her husband's massive collection of Royal Arch pennies. There were volumes of these, a very impressive collection neatly organized by jurisdiction into binders. So, of course, we accepted that donation. Apart from something like that, the directors of the Library and Museum Association decided a few years ago to no longer accept aprons and ashtrays. We're done with those. We have boxes upon boxes of aprons and certificates and plaques and knickknacks and Bibles in the basement that we don't know what to do with. Maybe we'll try to sell them, or maybe they'll just go into the garbage. Of course, we'll keep things like the White House Keystone gifted by Harry Truman and the tiny lapel pin worn by the second Grand Master of Colorado. But George A. Jones's apron and the Scottish Rite certificates, those will probably be tossed if no one wants to buy them. This is a difficult problem to address. We all love being Freemasons, and so, of course, we want to preserve artifacts of the fraternity. We find them valuable. But a lot of this stuff is just mass-produced Masonic cultural artifacts. Think Adorno and Horkheimer's critiques on mass production of culture. Sometimes it is just merchandise. These aren't handmade relics of the 18th century. They are mass-produced lapel pins and printouts and molded ashtrays. My lodge still has the original set of officer jewels made out of stamped tin. They're not pretty, but they are handmade and one of a kind. Now, lodge jewels can be ordered online for a couple of $100s, and they just aren't that impressive or valuable. So what do we do with this stuff? We should not expect the lodges to be the bearers of the burden for all of this stuff. Most lodges just don't have room for it all, nor do they want to manage it, store it, or bother with it at all. And we can't expect those who inherit this stuff to be the ones who have to find a brother to give it to. Most people who have inherited some apron or ring will only care if they can sell it or trash it. And let's be real, most Masonic artifacts are preserved because someone wanted to sell them and there was a willing buyer. I am thinking of a collection of ribbons we have in the Museum of the Grand Lodge of Colorado. Ribbons for the different officers, commanderies, press badges, etc. from the 1913 triennial of the Grand Encampment in Denver, which was the largest Masonic event in Colorado history. The reason we have a near-complete collection of these ribbons is because people have sold them to us. If they didn't think they could find a seller, they probably would have just tossed them out in the trash, because it's just a bunch of old tattered silk ribbons. They don't appear to have any value. They look like junk, but they are an important part of Colorado Masonic history. So why should we complain that someone wants to sell Masonic artifacts? The only reason those ribbons survived was that someone thought they could get some money out of them. Sorry, but this is capitalism. Love it or hate it. It really is overly idealistic to expect these items to be donated just because they're Masonic. I don't have a solution to the question. Not all artifacts are equal, and it depends on the item and its history as to whether it is worth the effort to keep, sell, or trash. The only comment I have is this. If someone is selling a Masonic artifact, get off your high horse and stop telling them to donate it to a lodge or a brother. Stop expecting the lodges to be storage facilities, and stop expecting non-Masons to put in the effort to find a Mason who will take it. Just be glad the item wasn't tossed in the trash, and that it is now available to be procured. If you really believe it should go to a lodge, how about you buy it and donate it, and not make it someone else's moral obligation? Patrick Day. Well, there you have this excellent piece. You can read it on the Meat, Act, and Part blog. Links back to that will be in the show notes. And of course, as always, Brother Patrick Day brings a wonderful, unique history in his articles, and I really appreciate his work. Sneak peek, guess what's coming next week? We've got a brand new Masonic Mythbusters from Brother Patrick Day. The question, was it originally 2 or 3 degrees? This should be a very interesting Masonic Mythbusters, and I hope you join us for that next week. With all that, I want to thank our producers, fellows, contributors, and legacy partners of the WCY podcast. If you're curious on how you can help support this show, head on over to our website, wcypodcast.com, click on Support the Show or the shop, or you can check out some of our other projects like Skull and Crown Limited, those are my leather works that I do, or you can even get a tarot reading by yours truly. All of the income that we take in, whether it's through donations, products, or services, goes right back into the production of this show and Masonic education. Trusted Masonic education, I should say. Trusted by you. Make sure to tune in next week for that awesome new segment we'll have with Worshipful Brother Patrick Day, as well as more Masonic education coming your way. So until next week, stay on the level. And for Whence Came You, I'm Robert Johnson. Take care.
You've been listening to Whence Came You, a Masonic podcast featuring research papers and discussions related to Freemasonry with your host, Brother Robert Johnson. Be sure to join us for our next edition.
WCY Media.
Why, that's me, man.